Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Friday night feature. I'm, of course, your host, Andy, and I'm representing both Gimme Hoya and Wrestling Royalty. If you haven't been here before, welcome, and I hope you're having a lovely Friday. I can see Mark, our moderator, is in doing his great work of spreading up-to-date news and making sure you're all behaving yourselves in the chat as well. If it is your first time, please make sure you drop us a like and a subscribe, but also, more importantly, drop us a comment on the subject that we were talking about tonight, which, of course, we are talking about the Bloodline. And one of the biggest storylines at the moment, I guess, outside of the Wyatt Six, which we did last week. So if you want to watch any content about the Wyatt Six, lots of it over on Gimme Hoya with Dom and his Howdy Hangouts. But we also covered it ad nauseum last week when we spoke about the Wyatt Six and what we think we're predicting, etc. But we got some more. We got that amazing interview this past Monday on Raw. Let me know what you thought about that as well. So a lot of things going on in WWE, but one of the biggest things is the Bloodline, the continuation of the story that we've got. So we've got a lot of people already in. I can see it's going down here. We've got Aaron SmackDown Fist tonight. They're in Madison Square Garden. I think it's a stripped back set tonight, so I think it will just be very minimal screens that we've seen in some of the places, like we did in Glasgow, where it's a very low like LED board and things like that. We've got a couple of other people in. We've got John G. Hey, hope you're having an awesome Friday. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, we've got Mark is doing some due diligence in there in the chat, and thank you very much. I can't read out one of the people because I think it's too early for me to say one of those words in the handle, but hello machine, I'll say that. Let us know, let's say, drop us comments. What are you thinking of this new Bloodline? And what I've done is I've put together a little bit of some photos, and we're going to talk about all the different people that are now involved and could be involved and have been involved, all that sort of stuff. So let me throw that in. And as Mark said right at the top of the show, Sam is in hibernation at the moment. So he's out whining and dining his lovely wife. So we are not going to have Sam on tonight. I think it's just going to be myself. So thank you very much for joining me and keep me company. And the best way to keep me company is to drop a comment in and let us know what you're thinking as we go along. But yeah, we saw on SmackDown last week, Jacob Fatu joined the Bloodline, or seemingly joined the Bloodline, running roughshod over a number of big stars. So we had Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and Cody Rhodes in particular, all laid out by the Bloodline at some point last week. Obviously, their plan was to make sure that none of those guys, Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, were not going to be involved in Money in the Bank. Neither of them did win their matches, so they will not progress through for a chance to win the briefcase. But then at the end of the show, we got Solo Sikoa versus Cody Rhodes, and the night ended, as you can see on this photo, with the Bloodline standing tall, a very different looking Bloodline to what we originally saw way back when. We did see this was the sort of the big image that we saw back in Vegas when they did the WrestleMania kickoff show. It feels like a lifetime ago now when The Rock presented this particular graphic. I thought this is super cool. Shows you the family tree of the on the Hawaii family. And what we should say right at the top of this is obviously it has been a big week for the Bloodline, but there's also been a lot going on outside of that as well. So unfortunately, the loss of Roman Reigns' dad, one of the Wild Samoan, Seeker as well. So thoughts and hopes and prayers and things like that go to Roman Reigns, and I don't mean that as in the character. I mean that as in the human being who obviously has lost his father. So anything wrestling related definitely takes a back seat when it comes to that sort of thing. So rest in peace, but on that side of things as well. So really sad news. For the Bloodline in real life. We've got a couple more people who have been joining us and sneaking in there. We've got Tom Talks Rubbish. Always good to see you in, buddy. Hope you're having a lovely Friday. Congratulations on your Chris Van Vliet content. Really good stuff to see. I know he was one of the ones who featured very highly on your bucket list of people to interview. So well done on that, buddy. Keep up the good work. We also had Scenescape Shopping, my good friend Dean, who's in as well, has another awesome YouTube channel. You can go check that out, Scenescape Shop, for any artist watch alongs. He does some great work. So go check out his channel. Make sure you give him a like and subscribe, as well as Tom Talks Rubbish. But we're going to crack on. Tom, I would love your company. So let me know what your thoughts are on this new bloodline that we've got going on, because as I said, it's very different over the past few weeks, months, etc. We now have Solo Sikoa as the de facto leader of the bloodline, who's kind of taken it upon himself to run the bloodline while Roman's not there, which is one of the bigger question marks as to whether that's like a legitimate claim, whether Roman actually knows anything that's going on, has he checked out, things like that. I think there's some big questions that are going to be answered very soon. We've had Tama Tonga come in, Tonga Lua as well, and now we've got, as I say, we had last week. We've had another addition, which is the Samoan Werewolf has been added, and I hope we get some decent merchandise like the shirt he's got on, because I thought it was a really cool way to introduce him. He's looking probably the best shape I've seen him in ever. Dude is normally a big guy, not afraid to throw himself around, get on that top rope, do moonsaults, etc. But he's looking very good at the moment, so he's really in shape. Dean's asking, someone explain to me who they all are. I feel I need to go and don't watch NXT. They haven't been on NXT, Dean, is the quick answer. These are guys who have predominantly made their name outside of any of the sort of bigger ones. So we don't, I guess that's the idea, is as a WWE fan, they're very much selling this as we'll let you know what you need to know. So the way this has kind of been played out, if you watch the likes of Paul Heyman, which we'll get into in a couple of minutes, Paul Heyman is very much selling this as these are guys you should be scared of. These are mercenaries. They're in it to hurt people, and not a lot else. And these are very much the sort of outcasts of the bloodline that Solo Sikoa has recruited and brought in. So yeah, as Mark says, Solo was in NXT, but I presume what you're actually talking about is the other guys that are here as well. So like Jacob Fatu, who in real life has had some legal issues in terms of, I think he was actually, when he was a lot younger, was arrested for armed felony. So he's not actually been allowed to come out of the US, I believe. And he is due to make an appearance up in Toronto for Money in the Bank when they've announced this big tag team match that's going on. So yeah, really interesting one. But New Japan is where the Gorillas of Destiny, which is, if anyone who hasn't seen, is obviously the two guys on the back, on the left in the black. They were the Gorillas of Destiny. So this is very much a case of, rather than it being NXT, they've cut their teeth elsewhere and have been brought in. They have sporadically made appearances in WWE, but nothing that you'd probably remember too much. Like Mark says, Camacho, he was part of that tag team with Hunico, which is obviously on the back of everything to do with Sin Cara. So I wouldn't take that as any kind of indication of what he is or what he's done. So I certainly would just kind of concentrate on very much just think about what WWE has shown you. And I think tonight we're going to get, an acknowledgement ceremony or something, where we might see a little bit more go down. I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about Paul Heyman. Now, if you did or didn't watch SmackDown, I very much enjoyed the CM Punk Paul Heyman interaction that we got, because Paul Heyman has been selling his ass off to try and get this new bloodline over and kind of like really show and kind of tell people, you should be scared of these guys. I can't control them. Solo's out of pocket. Like, I can't even control Solo. So Paul Heyman, who was obviously, as you can see here, was inducted into the Hall of Fame this past April. But I love the work he's doing. He's the sort of embrace of CM Punk, begging him to take him with him, like basically asking him to save him. Punk was getting a bit of a beat down, or was about to get beaten down, when Cody came in with a couple of baseball bats. And kind of setting up that. So it certainly seems that Paul Heyman is pining over missing Roman Reigns. He did that really emotional bit when the crowd was chanting a couple of weeks back, "We want Roman," and he responded with, "Believe me, no one in this room wants that more than me." So I think so far the MVP of this new bloodline story has been Paul Heyman, because without him, I just don't think there's been that kind of familiarity that he brings. Like, who Paul Heyman is. If you're a WWE fan, you know what he's about and what he's seen, and being next to Brock Lesnar or next to some of the bigger guys. But the way he's selling this is to go, no, these are the ones you should be scared of. So I say big respect to Paul Heyman, because he's been the kind of heartbeat of this story so far. So it'd be interesting to see how he unravels as it goes on, because Solo's starting to threaten him when he's saying, if I don't win this match, I'm going to come find you. You'll be cast out. So he's very much a case of Paul Heyman is hanging in there until Roman gets back. Will Roman come back? We'll get into that a little bit towards the end. But one question I'd like to know, chuck them in the comments. How do you think Solo Sikoa has evolved since he's kind of came in? We saw him come in at Clash of the Castle at Cardiff and help Roman Reigns. Very comically, he's had some stuff on social media where people have kind of taken the piss, where it's the whole stuff about maths or I think it was the South Korean fan awards, and he got kind of absolutely roasted in those, where he got most hated was Solo Sikoa in South Korea, and they really ripped him apart across there. But how do you think he's evolved into this de facto leader of the Bloodline? Are you buying it? Is there still a lot of work to be done? But let me know your thoughts. So drop them in the comments. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think as well. For what it's worth, my thoughts on it, I kind of feel like it's missing something. It's just missing a layer of maybe charisma. I know the kind of what they're doing is going for this strong silent type. Doesn't necessarily work. They're kind of trying to give him this image as well of being almost like a sort of mafioso leader, with the kind of dressing nicely but having the gloves on and the chain and the red. Some of the stuff they put him in has been a little bit ridiculous. So I would like to see a little bit more. If he's got a little bit more personality he can bring out in this, I do think he's got a kind of maybe spin off of Paul Heyman a little bit more. I'm not sure he's the right one to go for Cody right now. It's interesting that they've kind of thrown Cody back into a Bloodline story. It makes sense, I guess, from the perspective of Solo wanting to pick that baton up and say, well, if Roman can get the job done, I'll get it done. And it could obviously lead to what everyone's expecting is this Bloodline actual civil war, where we see the original Bloodline versus the new Bloodline. But yeah, we've got a couple of comments. Mark says, I got to be honest, I feel like he's trying too hard. Dean says, it would have been better if he just stayed silent, more ominous, and he needs a tailor. Yeah, his suits definitely seem too big for him a lot of the time. I don't think it comes naturally for him to wear these kind of suits and this kind of attire. So, I'm interested to see how this develops, but it certainly seems the way we're going right now is we're going to end up with Cody versus Solo for the title at some point. It'd be an absolute travesty if the belt goes on him, though. He was never a big threat or champion when he was in NXT. He did capture the North American Championship, but I think he only got it when he was actually starting to appear on the main roster. And even then he had to give it back because he wasn't part of the NXT, which is strange sort of times, but never mind. But yeah, we're starting to see him come out of his comfort zone a little bit, I think, and getting a mic in his hand and making him be more present on the camera rather than just standing in the back and growling, cracking his knuckles, etc. But yeah, we've got Solo and his gloves made me think he was going to reveal he was actually the guy that ran over Stone Cold, blonde hair. He did it for The Rock. Well, part of that family, I guess. Aaron says, do you think Baron Corbin will be impersonating other wrestlers every week on SmackDown? I don't think so. We're not going to talk about Baron Corbin this week, but I would wait and see what Baron Corbin did. He did some great work down in NXT. It would be interesting to see if that translates to a better run on the main roster, because he kind of just became more of himself, and he wasn't too serious, wasn't too jokey. He just kind of found that lane. So I think Baron Corbin's more likely just to kind of stay in the middle now, and just hopefully find a gimmick or just be himself that actually works. So as I said, one of the first things that we saw back was the fact when we're getting this new Bloodline fleshed out, was this idea that we were going to see some faces that, as Dean had mentioned, you just don't really see them on NXT. You don't see them in any WWE program, and then all of a sudden they appear, and then we drip feed them in. So on this one in particular, we got. I'm trying to remember which one it was that he appeared at. Mark would be able to help me out on that. When we were first introduced to Tama Tonga. I'm trying to remember which episode it was that he appeared. But anyway, Tama Tonga was the first one to kind of come out. And then we got Tanga Loa, who also has appeared. Now, these guys were in a tag team called Gorillas of Destiny over in New Japan, who had a very catchy theme tune. I'd say to anyone, go have a listen to it. But these guys are obviously being kind of like put there. We've seen, in particular, some interesting comments going on. Tama Tonga has been the one who has been really crazy, and he's given him a couple of like weird sort of mannerisms and very much kind of snarling and doing that side of things. So they're really building these guys up to be almost kind of like Wild Samoan style, but with like a modern twist. Which is cool to see. Like, they're obviously harkening back. This is the whole thing, is paying respect to your heritage and acknowledging the tribal chief, etc. So yeah, very interesting that these guys, I think they really need to make them maybe have like a tag team title run, because the quicker you can legitimize these guys with tag team championships, people will start to take them a lot more seriously. Like, it's obvious we've had a little solo run with Tama Tonga where he's involved in some of the qualification tournaments that they had, but we haven't seen too much of Tanga Loa. I'm going to fall over my words all over here when I'm saying this many names. I think you have to put these guys in a proper tag team, and now especially when we're introducing more and more, because there are potential to have some more of the bloodline, like, the distant relatives come into this as we go along. But I think in particular, you just need to start having to think about, how do we present these guys properly? And I think the right move for me would be to stick them in a tag team together. I know at the moment DIY is currently feuding for those belts over on SmackDown. But for me, you're going to have Jacob Fatu, who is going to be a threat on his own. He's a loose cannon. You don't really need him to be going for too many of the belts. I would say when you look at Jacob Fatu, he's probably closer to Umaga and the way that they kind of does that side of things. So I think his mannerisms are more similar. I don't think you have to have a belt on him. You just unleash him as the enforcer that Solo was, and go from there. Speaking of Jacob Fatu, as you say, one of the big things is his nickname is the Samoan Werewolf. He is unhinged. He's in great shape. He's normally a lot bigger, as in like his build is wider sort of thing, but he looks like he's slimmed down and got a lot more muscle on him at the moment. But I thought the way they presented it on SmackDown was absolutely fantastic. They just had him go through 3 of the most popular baby faces on SmackDown last week. And the fact that he put Cody Rhodes for a table, he showed the airtime that he got going from a turnbuckle through the table. All that, to me, was one of the best debuts they've had in a long time. Now, we knew he'd signed, and we were just kind of waiting on that side of things to unravel, and who were we going to get. There's big rumors that Jacob Fatu might have gone on the sort of OG Bloodline side, and Roman might have brought him in as an equalizer, but it appears not to be the case. And then we'll circle back to what we had as the original ones. Now, Jey Uso has managed to get himself over massively with the crowd. That the entrance, or when he wins a match, the crowd go crazy for it. He's got Yeet over. His presentation and the way he's kind of developed into a singles competitor was probably better than I expected. I still personally think he needs a few more moves into his moveset. Give him like a submission move, give him a better finisher, because I just don't think super kicks and splashes are good enough. We've been through this, so I'm not going to kind of tread over too much old ground. But I just think there's a lot of people putting him as favourite to win Money in the Bank this year, and it's next week. I'm not so sure it'll be the right move. I wonder if this is where the Bloodline storyline starts to spill over, and this is where Jey starts to get sucked back in terms of seeing these guys who are almost disgracing the name that they used to have. And I just think this is where we will start to see that happen. And then do we eventually see the likes of Jimmy coming in? Because this was the last time we saw Jimmy Uso, was that he was getting beaten on by his own family, in particular his brother, Solo Sikoa, who obviously he was the one that made the call to boot Jimmy out of the Bloodline, and said there has to be consequences, to losing. So this is the last time we saw Jimmy. It definitely feels to me like we're gonna have to wait to see Jimmy when he comes back at the side of Roman Reigns. And there's some speculation that maybe we might see that next week at Money in the Bank, because we've got this tag team match that's been announced. I think it's a 6-man tag team at the moment, where it's going to be Cody, KO, and Randy Orton versus 3 of the Bloodline. I think it'd be interesting to see which 3 of the Bloodline, if they specify, or if we'll have to keep guessing, because obviously they've got 4 that they could call upon. Do we change that into it? Yeah, I'm not sure at the moment, but keep an eye on SmackDown tonight in particular. And then what part is The Rock going to play in this? Because one of the theories I had going back quite a while now was, are we going to see The Rock being the one who's made called the shots on this? Is he going to be the one who's actually in charge of the new Bloodline? And he's been kind of speaking to Solo. And, is he disappointed that Roman wasn't able to keep the belt on him? That's the kind of story I'd expect them to tell. And that can lead eventually into Rock versus Roman. But do we get a nice, fun Survivor Series match between the OGs and the new Bloodline? And I think personally, yes. It's just a case of does that align with The Rock and his current schedule? He's a busy guy, always doing his films in Hollywood. But I think The Rock's got a big part to play in this Bloodline story that's going on at the moment. Probably even more so in the short term compared to Roman. But we can't talk about the Bloodline without talking about Roman Reigns. He has been missing since WrestleMania, which makes sense. It was a big loss. It'll be interesting to see moving forward how regular he's going to appear, because he's obviously, when he was champion, wasn't making too many appearances. It became sporadic. But do we see Roman Reigns come back and do a few weeks at a time and then disappear? Will he come back for big surprise appearances? Time is going to tell. But I'm very excited to see, and I think they've done a fantastic job of. They haven't even had to do anything with Roman to get him back to being a babyface. He's just turned into a very popular guy who, even though all this kind of shady stuff he'd done previously and everyone kind of hated him and people were getting fed up with his title run, the crowds have started to chant his name again. So he is incredibly over without even being there, which, serves its purpose massively. He is happy because he's been off for weeks and weeks and weeks. We're heading what was beginning of April with WrestleMania, and we're nearly at the beginning of July. That's a good holiday. It's a good time to refresh yourself and refresh your character. And the fact that Solo's doing his work and taking over, and the fact that Cody's doing his stuff, has meant that Roman can come back and they can be whatever they want him to be now. I think they're just going to align him with Jimmy, and then they'll try and suck a Jey back in and use that side of things to say, we need you. Sorry for all the stuff that's gone down previously, but we need you back. And does Jey get involved? And I think they'll spin that out for a good long while yet as well. Sam is out of hibernation, just to drop a comment saying he'll be back next week, which will be the preview show for Money in the Bank, which is always an exciting pay-per-view or premium live event, whichever is your poison. But yeah, we'll be going through Money in the Bank next week and going through our predictions as well. Dean says Cody needs Rock. Yeah, there was that kind of big promo between the two of them on Raw after WrestleMania, where there's definitely seems to be some unfinished business. We've got the idea of this People's Championship belt going on, and The Rock wanted to hold Cody's belt just one time. But if you know anything about The Rock, he loves a good bit of power, and that leads us to tonight, where we're going to see this acknowledgement ceremony, where presumably it's going to acknowledge the fact that Jacob Fatu is there. but this might start to put the shoots of, do we see any of the OG bloodlines start to come into this and, question Solo? I don't think, even if it's at Madison Square Garden, especially because of what happened this week in losing his father, I don't think Roman Reigns is going to be there. We might see Jimmy, but I think this might be more of a vehicle just to get us closer to that 6-man tag next week. Get a little bit more idea of what's going on in terms of who's the 3 at the bloodline that's going to be there. We might see a little bit more of a performance from Paul Heyman, which was always a great thing. Dean says, feels like people will turn on Cody soon, hoping to see Rock tonight, staying up for it. Yeah, I mean, Madison Square Garden is a big one. I believe it's sold out, and they've even tried to put more seats on sale by stripping everything back. So it'd be really impressive to see the pop and the noise that we'd get in such an iconic arena like Madison Square Garden if we were to get The Rock. And Dean's staying up for it as well. So, this week we're not covering it on Gimme Hole, but if there is anything to talk about, we will jump on and do a hot take if needs be. But it's always great to see all these different storylines going on at the moment. Obviously, we've got the Wyatt Six stuff, which seems to be more across on Raw. Then you got the Bloodline stuff more across on SmackDown. Will those two ever come together? We've had that kind of hint at Triple H, is like, how do we move those pieces into position so they do eventually meet up? But let me know, are you enjoying this new Bloodline? Are you enjoying the Bloodline saga as it seems to have turned into? We've got, if Sam wasn't enough, we've got Dom as well from Gimme a Hole. They're all creeping in the comments. He said, I'm such a fan of Jacob Fatu. His work in MLW is incredible. Dom is a big fan of MLW, and we started to get a couple of interviews through over on WrestleSphere. So if you do want to have a look through WrestleSphere, you've got interviews there from MLW, you've got interviews from TNA, you've got interviews from WWE, and you've got interviews from AEW as well. So always plenty of content going on. But let me know, say in the comments, even if you're watching this after the fact, we'd love to have a discussion. Follow us along on social media, click that like and subscribe button. We'd love to have a chat about all things wrestling as well. But make sure you are following along on not just Gimme a Hole, not just Wrestling Royalty, but also WrestleSphere. But I'm excited for the way that this leads. I think the end game has to be Survivor Series, where we do see the clash of new Bloodline versus original Bloodline. How we get there is the exciting part, because we need Roman to come back at some point and kind of establish his dominance again. But no doubt the sort of tasting the power that Solo's had, he'll want to keep that. We've got the wild card now of all these new guys coming in. There's potential. There's still brothers and cousins that can still join as well. 2 of which I believe are confirmed to have signed with WWE, moving across from various different promotions. So where do they factor in? Do we just kind of end up having this, I don't know, this almost like tendrils coming out like we used to have with NWO and sort of some of the bigger factions we've had as well. So if you are into that side of things, I think you're going to enjoy a lot of what's coming up. But just enjoy the ride as we always do. Some of the other stuff that's happened this week, obviously we saw the release of Dijak over on Monday Night Raw. As of today, he's a free agent. And it looks like he might end up going somewhere like TNA or like AEW. So be interesting to see where he lands. Obviously, he had some fantastic matches over in NXT, but never really got a chance to showcase his talents on the main roster. He was either saddled with a mask and part of Retribution, or just didn't get a chance this time to show everyone. But if you have a chance, obviously check out the hype behind him. It's more of his NXT matches. So I'll just implore you to go see some of those. He was on there like years ago, came up, moved back on there. Both runs, I thought Dijak had some great matches to sink your teeth into if you want to. But he's going to be moving on. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Obviously, I did say at the top of the show, I thoroughly enjoyed that interview that they did with Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy. I thought that was fantastic. I'm in the middle of writing a feature piece for that for WrestleSphere. So you'll be able to read that in the next few days, where I sort of liken it more to horror films and, you know, the horror film sequel that it seems to have spun into. But I thought it added so much depth to what we're going to see in the upcoming weeks of the Wyatt Six. And one way to know everything that's going on with the Wyatt Six stuff is to follow along with Dom on the Howdy Hangouts that he does on Gimme Ho Yeah. He likes to unravel that sort of stuff. He has like shorts. He'll jump on. He'll go through the latest goings on because creepy stuff in wrestling is definitely his bag. But as I said, the only way you can do that is to make sure you subscribe and follow along. Get that bell icon on, and make sure you are tuning in. That'll do it for tonight. We're going to have a nice quick one there. I really appreciate you spending your Friday evening, Friday day, Friday night, or Saturday morning, depending on where you are in the world with me. It means a lot. And thank you very much for joining us. And I will see you next week for a preview of Money in the Bank. And it sounds like at least Sam will be joining us, which is always great to have him back in. But for now, I've been Andy. This has been Gimme Ho Yeah and Wrestling Royalty. Have a great weekend, guys.